remote participation. It's being run through PAT, and I just want to thank PAT for their assistance during this process. We're working our way best we can through this process with the remote participation, and certainly I think we're getting better and better at it. But we have a lengthy agenda that I want to dive right into. But before I go to the agenda, I did want to say that we will be having a public participation session as we typically do. And anybody who's interested in being in that public participation, please go to our website and click on the link. Then I'll be notified, as well as our co-host, that we do have somebody that would like to speak, and we can work to make that happen. So I want to thank everybody for their participation today. I want to wish everybody health and safety during this time. All of us across the city and across the world are under a great deal of strain and stress and pressure. And certainly we want to just do the best we can to continue to discuss and operate as a city and take care as best we can, city business, continue city operations as best we can. So why don't we first, if we can, take a moment of silence and think about and pray for those that are struggling through this illness. Okay, thank you. And then I would like to have everybody stand and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for that. Okay, first item, approval of minutes. We have the minutes from our April 21, 2020 regular school committee meeting. I'd like to open that up.
Motion to receive and approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Arnottis. And if we could have a roll call vote, please, Leanna.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Great. I just wanted to mention that we do have our full committee here today. All school committee members are here, as well as our superintendent, Dr. Mark Kerbel, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Chris Lord, Joe Scanlon, our business manager, and Steve Farrell, our human resources director, as well as Leanna Harris, who will be taking the minutes for the meeting. Am I missing anybody?
Carla Chioda.
Carla Chioda, our special education director, is here as well. And great, we'll jump into the next item is approval of bills. We have a couple of warrants. Mrs. Carpenter, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 4467 in the amount of $165,102.81 dated May 5th, 2020, subject to audit.
Second.
Great, you've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter for approval of warrant number 4467, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Present.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 446 in the amount of $825,851.82 dated May 5th, 2020, subject to audit.
Second.
Great, thank you. You've heard the motion for approval of warrant number 4466, made by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Present.
Okay,
Thank you, that's all.
thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. We'll go to continued business. First item is the MSBA Higgins project. Mrs. Dunn, anything new to report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, we are still in the closeout process. We are still proceeding with some of the smaller items that are still being worked on, such as the microphones and signage. And also, there was an issue that Mr. Miko brought to my attention about a potential problem with some of the door handles. And I've referred it to Mr. Heafy, and we're looking into that. So everything so far, so good.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Next item, fiscal year 20 budget updates. Do we have anybody from the administration that would like to speak and give an update? Mrs. Dunn, did you have any questions? Oh, Dr. Kerbal, go ahead.
I raised my hand. It's tough to see me.
Yep.
Okay,
No, please
I'll
go
speak to the FY20 budget. This is similar to the conversation that we had yesterday in the finance subcommittee. So I did prepare something talk about FY20 and its impact into the FY21 budget. So if you allow me, I'll just speak a little bit.
Please.
Is that all right? Okay. So a little history, but not too much of a history. The FY20 budget was in a deficit part of the school year because of the rise in insurance, special education costs, severance pay, and overtime, if you remember this. However, because of the school closure, I think we were able to close this gap and project to be in the black. And certainly Joe Scanlon can add to this. But we'll be in the black, but by how much depends on what we do for the remainder of the school year. And there's several factors that are in play here that really dictate our direction. City revenue sources are greatly affected by the COVID-19 closure. And Mike Ingris had mentioned in conversations that we've had several, could be a potential $6 million gap for FY20. So we try to make that up as well as think about FY21, and I think they go together. So we are doing things to address the gap. Joe Scanlon froze the budget a couple of months ago. Yesterday, we laid off some part-time employees, those that were without benefits. And we are looking at other areas. And really sorry for some of the staff that were just laid off. We know how important they are, and to do that is painful. So we may, in our voice for the rest of the afternoon, may sound like we're unemotional about this, but we all care about our staff, and we care about the kids that they service. And so, like I said, we may say it may sound like cold-blooded, but it's just a fact from here on in. We're trying to help mitigate staggering losses that may affect us in FY21. So once again, listen to Mike Ingris talk about FY21, put out numbers, something like $7 million to $14 million deficit. So given that, and the mayor had talked about this at length yesterday, okay, and we are preparing for an FY21 budget that is probably 10% lower than last year, or FY20. So central office, we've started to look at what it would take to cut $5 million, $4 million, 3, 2. So we're in the process now of looking at that. And so everything we do in FY20 will impact and try to make up the deficit in FY21. Just want to end with just a couple of things regarding school budget. So prior to me arriving and under the leadership of Karen Murtagh, so we know how the school department struggled with funding last year and the year before. So this year, when we were discussing about the SOA, the Student Opportunity Act, and getting $1.2 million, I'll tell you, I felt great. No matter which direction we were going in, we are really in a win-win position. And I feel really great for Peabody. What's happened now, and what we're going to be talking about this afternoon and subsequent weeks, is pretty devastating. And so when people hear us talking about deficits, please know that it's going to be very impactful. And I can't say enough about teachers. We've already started a conversation with the union president. Mary Henry's been terrific as we try to get through this closure. And I can't say, and I can say the same thing for the other union presidents I've talked to. Very positive, trying to stay upbeat. I would say everybody on this committee cares about our school system, our teachers, our administrators, and anybody in our staff that are very involved. So as we make cuts or thinking about making cuts, please know it's very personal to all of us. Okay, Mayor Bencourt, back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kerbel. And just to add to that, I think all of us know that this is, we're dealing with an unprecedented event, something that we've never seen before or had the opportunity to handle and work through. And it's going to be very difficult. It has been devastating to our budget. Just to give people a sense of how we do municipal budgets, we really have three sources of income. One is real estate taxes, number two is state aid, and number three is local revenue, local receipts. Local revenue, local receipts would mean like excise tax and motel, hotel tax and meals tax, things of that nature. Income we bring in the regular course of operations. That number is significantly down, obviously, with the number of businesses and restaurants and hotels and things of that nature are not in operation. That's had a significant effect on what our revenue that we're bringing into the city. Millions of dollars in revenue that we're not bringing in, that we had budgeted for and planned for and projected to have. Also state aid. We haven't been given certainly numbers as to what we're going to receive from state aid, but I'm anticipating, based on information and meetings that I've attended, that we are going to have a significant reduction in state aid. State aid being unrestricted general government aid, which is money that comes to cities and towns for the city side operation, but then also Chapter 70 money, which is specific to education. We're looking at millions of dollars in reduction there, and hoping for the best, but for the information that I've been given and told to plan for, we're looking at significant reduction in state aid, resulting in millions of dollars. Just to give people a perspective, for 2019, just 2 years ago, as opposed to what we received this year, it's $7.6 million in a decrease. So just 2 years ago, 7.6 million. If we were to go back to 2 years ago, their levels, we're looking at a 7.6 reduction just in Chapter 70, just in education. So this is something none of us have ever seen before. It's going to then put a lot of pressure on school administration, on us as elected officials, on our whole educational system to try to figure out how to best handle this. And we're going to be working with our unions closely, all of our teachers and staff, to try to come up with the best way that this can work to continue to provide the best education we can to our students. But it is going to put a lot of pressure on us. It's going to result in painful decisions. And we're going to just try to work our way step by step through this. Hopefully there's some aid that comes our way from the federal government, from the state, but it's just too early to determine. And I am too, as well as you, Dr. Kerbel, am discouraged because I actually felt that we had making some positive steps. The Student Opportunity Act, that 1.2 million, I thought we had a very strong plan for, and I know a great deal of work went into that through your office, through our teachers and principals. And I actually felt really good about that step. But now, with people not working, with so many businesses shut down, I know it's putting a lot of pressure on, obviously, municipal government, state government, and federal government. And I know all cities and towns are dealing with this. This isn't just Peabody. We have almost daily conversations with other municipal leaders, and we're all trying to figure out the best way we can to work our way through this. So this is going to be, we won't be making decisions tonight. This will be made decisions that we have to make in the weeks, the months, the years ahead. Right now, school is shut down till September, and we have to see how that unfolds and how that all works out. And hopefully, again, we get some guidance, some assistance, both from the federal government and from the state to try to help us through this. But this is really going to test all of us, and we really need to come together and work together as best we can to do the best we can for all of us. So I feel like we have a very good team. We have wonderful people in place. This committee, our administrators, our principals, our teachers. We have wonderful staff, and we're going to have to, it's going to test all of us. So we just have to work our way through it as best we can and stick together as best we can. So it's pretty bleak budget updates right now, and I anticipate it's going to be like that for a while. But let's just keep doing the best we can. So let's move on to continued business. Item number 3, Weld School MSBA project updates. Mrs. Dunn, anything new to report on the Weld School MSBA project?
Yes, some good news. We are presently ready to advertise for the design team that will help us with the feasibility study. So the language is currently being reviewed at the MSBA office, and if they approve everything that we've requested, that will be placed in the central register. And we are currently on track with the MSBA process to be selecting a designer in July. They schedule out these meetings. They only have a few districts at a time attend those monthly meetings. And if everything falls into place, in July, we will have the meeting, and MSBA will be working with us on the designer selection. So things are moving right along, working with the OPM. Dorn Whittier has been very, very helpful. They're very nice to work with. We're going to have a small working group meeting with them just to set out some parameters about how we want to handle the billing, the invoices, just the mechanics of a project. And then we will have our regular monthly school building committee meeting for the Welch. And we haven't set that date yet because we need to have that small working meeting first. So things are going well.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Let's hold item number 4 to the next meeting. And I'd like to go to redistricting, item number 5. I did want to give a brief update. I have spoken to a number of people that I would like to have serve on that committee. Mr. Hockman is going to serve from the school committee. And we also, I've reached out to a couple of city councilors. And I would like to have a member of the city council on this committee. And I expect that we will have one within the next couple of days. I've also reached out to some administrators and teachers and other people that I think would be a great fit for this committee. More so than ever, I really think we need to look at redistricting. And I know it's something that Mr. Hockman, you and others have spoken about, but I think we need to look at this very much in depth. And maybe it's just some slight changes, or maybe it's something that there might be some recommendations for a deeper look. But I think this is something we need to do. And I am very encouraged by the response that I've gotten from people. And I expect that I'll be able to announce probably within the next week, no later than the next meeting, pretty strong committee that we can put forward. I'm anticipating about 7 to 8 members of this committee. I think that would be the right number, particularly because we're challenged in terms of connecting. But I think it's going to be a good group that I'm going to be able to bring forward. I do want to have a conversation with our incoming superintendent, Josh Vidala, about this as well. But I think we'll be able to announce that very shortly. Mr. Hockman, I know this is your item. Anything you want to add to that or speak to? I think you've been correct in talking about this and something that we need to do as a city and a school district. So I didn't know if there's anything you want to add at this point.
No, thank you, Mayor. You and I spoke last week, and I appreciate your guidance on this and the efforts that you're making to formulate this committee, and look forward to meeting the members and getting to work.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm encouraged and optimistic that we'll be able to get moving on this very shortly. So thank you for that. Okay, public participation. Like to open that up now. see if there's any,
I can bring people in. There are 3 people as attendees, Karen Mayo, Marissa Fast, and Sandy.
is there
And-
anybody, there's anybody that would like to speak? Have they notified you, Dr. Lord, that they would like to speak?
If they're just attending, as I understand it, there's supposed to be a flag of some sort where they raise their hand. They'd like to be a part of it. If I'm missing that, please let me know, but I can bring them into this conversation if they have an interest. And if you're on the website, you should be able to click the hand to indicate you would like to be brought into the conversation.
Thank you,
But
Dr.
I don't
Lord.
see
Yeah,
that at this time. I just see 3 people watching.
great, thank you. Yep, I see the same. I don't see anybody that has raised their hand to speak. So we'll move on now to the superintendent's report. Dr. Kerbal, I'll turn it over to you for your report.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. One last thing I wanted to mention, and I had it on another piece of paper. I just want to mention Dr. Josh Badala has been very involved with budget conversations and as well as meeting with the union president. And so I know Josh is watching, so I just want to, didn't want to be remiss and leave out Dr. Badala. Let's see, I want to talk about the 2022 school year calendar. So there's a draft. I just want to give it to you to look at, okay? And then the next time we meet, if there are any changes, I'll let you know way ahead of time, but I don't anticipate any. The other thing too is I have to speak to the union presidents to make sure that they're okay with this calendar. I have not done so, but it's a first read, so you have that. Okay. Second thing, I want to give you a food service update. Yesterday's total was 723. It's fairly consistent now. The Weld School had 440 families, well, students, I should say. Higgins had 193. High school had 90 for a total of 723. Also want to thank Haven for Hunger and No Child Left Behind in Peabody. No Child Goes Hungry in Peabody for their help. Corey Jackson and Jared Hockman. So thank you and your volunteers. I want to thank the volunteers who are there each week. There is a comment I wanted to make about summer programs. And I think you know this from history. So right now our summer program, we don't have a summer program. We actually have a school year food service program that ends when school comes to an end at the end of the year. We are under the 50% threshold, so therefore we don't qualify for reimbursement for a year-round program, which is the people who are on the original committee talk about the kind of support we need to do for families this summer. Okay. If you have any ideas, please let me know ahead of time, but I'll try to set that up sometime next week.
And Dr. Kerbal, if I could just jump in, I don't think it can be emphasized enough, the impact and the difference that Citizens In, under the direction of Corey Jackson, and the No Child Goes Hungry in Peabody, led by Jared Hockman and the Felds, they have meant, both those organizations, all the volunteers. I want to thank our cafeteria workers, our teachers that have volunteered, administrators who have volunteered. That is a tremendous operation that we're running, and it's really made a difference. And it doesn't happen without a lot of people helping. It's going to transition into the summer. We have a summer foods program that's been worked on through our public library. So that additional work will take place as we organize. But we've really made a difference these last several weeks in helping a number of families and students and people in our community that needed assistance. So it's really been a community effort, and I just wanted to again emphasize the importance of everybody helping out in this way. It's really made a difference. It's mattered to people, and I really feel good about that. And it's been great to see Peabody Pride in that manner. So thank you, Dr. Kerbal, and your team for that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Bencourt. The third item on my report has to do with sorry, Jared, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, first of all, thank you, Dr. Kerbal, for your kind words. Thank you, Mayor Betancourt, for your acknowledgements and kind words. Again, thank you to all the volunteers both in No Child Goes Hungry and Citizens in Haven from Hunger. I want to thank Citizens in and Haven from Hunger for their support in terms of location as well as food products. The Food Services Department in our Peabody Public Schools for continuing to support our students with the grab and goes. I do have been talking with Corey for the summer program, and No Child Goes Hungry is committed to continuing to fill the grocery bags throughout the summer. So we will have grab and go sites of sorts for families in need. We have to work through some logistics on that, but they will continue through the summer. No Child Goes Hungry's backpack program on the weekends, which was our initial charge, will continue. We will continue to make home deliveries on Fridays throughout the summer to the 313 to 330, it varies weekly, students that we service through that backpack program. We are committed with our volunteers to continuing to fill those bags and deliver them to houses. I just got off a Zoom meeting with For Kids Only, who has an opportunity through a grant to provide us with some supplemental food to distribute to our students. So I literally got off that meeting at 3 o'clock. So we're working on some of that, and I intend to present that to Dr. Kerbel and Mayor Betancourt, and then to the committee as a whole, perhaps if it's warranted, on some of those items. But there's a lot of fantastic people out there here in Peabody who are devoting a lot of time, a lot of resources, both in terms of financial contributions and labor and vehicles to allow for our kids to continue to be fed. So I just wanted to publicly thank all of them and thank all of you for the support that you've provided as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Mrs. Carpenter, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, thank you. I did want to thank all of the volunteers. I appreciate, all the cafeteria workers and everybody that's doing their part. But I did have a question in regards to the summer program. Is the program that we were using before for many years, where people could go to the library, is that not going to be happening anymore?
No, we'll be having that program as well. We've decided to have discussions about that. Our library director, Kate Merlin, and her team, but we anticipate that we'll be working with Citizens in Haven from Hunger, the No Child Goes Hungry, and again, we're looking at trying to make it a team effort. But no, that program will continue, and we're working on those plans now.
Great, because that was a really good program as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kerbel, turn it over to you.
Sure. Just want to mention Maureen Rose, Director of Food Service, and her assistant Chrissy Flynn for helping to put out 3,600 meals this week. And also Officer Rick Cochran, there have been testimonials on his behalf for the work that he's doing, delivering food as well. So I want to thank Officer Rick Cochran. Okay, I want to move on to third item, waive the community service requirement. And so there is a service requirement that given the situation, I would like to see that waived. I want to recognize Beverly Dunn to be able to speak to it. Beverly,
Yes,
do you
Mr.
mind
Dunn.
speaking about this?
Thank you. Through the chair, this is an issue that is one which is within the school committee's power to waive. Currently, under the COVID conditions, the commissioner, of course, has been dealing with all kinds of requirements for high school graduation as far as credits and MCAS pass, and just a whole group of issues for graduating seniors. All of that is within the commissioner's control, but the one with local control is the community service requirement. At this point, under these circumstances, we do have some students who have not completed their community service requirement, and there is just no way they can do that. So I would like to make a motion that we follow the recommendation of the superintendent and that we waive the community service requirement for the graduation, for the graduating class of 2020. So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Was that, Mrs. Carpenter, was that you that seconded the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We heard the motion. Any comments or questions on it? Mr. Amico?
Yes, through the chair, thank you. Ms. Dunn, I would obviously support this one. Would you also make a motion or piggyback a motion for middle school as well? I believe they have a requirement for community service as well, depending on what program they're in. So I just wanted to let people know about that as well. I believe it's National Honor Society.
Oh,
Thank-
okay. You know what? And actually, I have no problem doing a second motion. I think this one, this was the only one I was aware of because it's an actual requirement. They can't graduate without it. So why don't we keep the separate and do the one for the high school graduates first, and then no problem with the requirement for the middle school. However, I do have a question. If it's a National Honor Society requirement, I don't know if the school committee can actually waive that. Because National Honor Society is a basically that is a private entity. Would you mind if we held that off for the next meeting, just to see if that's something we can do?
Sure, and through the chair, maybe what we can do is we can write a letter on behalf of those students at the middle school because of the pandemic.
Right, that. Mhm.
Great. All set, Mr. Amico?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Kerbal, is your recommendation for the waiver of community service is strictly for our seniors, is that right?
That's correct. Thank you.
And we do have our policy is to have 40 community service hours during their high school career. The seniors that you're seeking waivers for, do you know if they've all completed at least 30 community service hours?
That I don't know, but I'll defer to Chris Lloyd. Dr. Lloyd, if you have the answer.
It's something we'd have to get some more detail on. All of the seniors have done something, but some have enrolled as sophomores, some have enrolled as juniors, so their requirements would be less. It would be a pretty detailed analysis to find out if they had met the requirement as a 3-year student, and they would have had at least 30. We'd have to look into that because they're all different.
Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm sympathetic to the seniors for a variety of reasons, and I'm certainly going to support this. I just want to point out that there are volunteer opportunities available still for community service that can be done through Chromebooks that are provided to students that are creative. We have a lot of students out there who could use arts and crafts projects that they might be able to develop and put out through, whether it be emails or somehow through our teaching staff to support kids and families with some downtime that they may have. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities reading to students who also have some downtime that can be recorded and put on a platform through whether it's the Peabody Education Foundation or some other organization. So there are volunteer and community service opportunities available where students wouldn't even need to leave their homes and would still be in a safe environment. Like I said, I'm going to support this because I don't want to see anybody not graduate, but to suggest that there's nothing available for students is inaccurate. They may need to be a little more creative, but they have the tools, or they should have the tools available to do something. And although I really don't want anyone to go through the labor of finding out the percentage of students who haven't completed at least 75% of their obligation or whatever grade that they would be, came in, everything except for their senior year. I suspect there are some of those students too, and they're going to skate by, which is discouraging for me because we put this community service obligation upon all of our Peabody High students for a reason. We want them to be committed to our community. I think most of them have. I think a vast majority of them have. But some kids are going to get by because they elected to wait till the last minute to put their community service obligation in their heart. And that's somewhat discouraging. So I've got that off my chest. I will support Dr. Kerbal's recommendation and Ms. Dunn's motion, but I just wanted to at least say that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Leanna, could please do a roll call on the motion?
Mr. Amico,
Yes.
Mr. Arnott,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Olympio,
yes,
Mrs. Dunn,
Yes.
Thank you. Turn it over to you, Dr. Kerbal.
Okay, what I'd like to do is skip item 4 and 5 and go to 6. And then allow, then when we go back and talk about graduation and NEAS, I'll turn that over to Dr. Lord. So the search and seizure policy, what I would like, I would like the Quality and Standards Subcommittee to review really 3 policies. One has to do with search and seizure policy, considering some of the comments that were made the past several months about search and seizures at the middle school. And so I think it's rightfully so that we revisit the policy. So that's one. The second one, there's new language from the state regarding McKinney-Vento. And so I would like that subcommittee to look at the McKinney-Vento language. And then the third, it sounds spicy, but there's nothing to it, what I'm willing to say. But this was brought up to me in January and about an issue that happened in another state. But we don't have any language regarding student-teacher relationships and things such as dating. Can a teacher date a student? We don't have any language for that. We don't have that going on in Peabody. Okay, so but I'm bringing it up since I'm asking the policy to get together, the subcommittee. I'd like you to look at the 3 policies, please. Search and seizure, and it's called interrogation and seizures, McKinney-Vento, and then student-teacher relationships.
Okay.
Mrs. Dunn,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, I'll recognize you.
thank you. I'll make a motion to follow the recommendation of the superintendent and refer those 3 policy questions to the Quality and Standards Subcommittee for work on those issues. So moved.
Great, you've heard the
Second.
motion. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico,
Yes.
Mr. Arnott,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Olympio,
yes,
Mrs. Dunn,
Yes.
Great. Dr. Lord, Dr. Kerbal, we have a couple of donations as well
We,
from a truly
yeah, before
wonderful
we get-
resident.
Mayor Ben, we have to go over the graduation update and the NEAS report. Did you want to go over the donations first, or do you want to go over those reports?
Why don't we do donations first?
Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I just speak on the policy? I'm going to make a quick motion on
Oh,
the,
I'm sorry. Yep, we can go back to that.
thank you.
Mr. Huckman.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that in regard to the interrogations and searches policy, that we get an opinion from Don Kahn or our legal counsel, as well as Chief Tom Griffin. So moved.
Actually, I'll be honest with you, if I may, Mr. Chairman. On that motion, just hearing this right now, I'd like to get the input of Steve Finnegan. He's the legal counsel for MASC. And I know he could also give us some information on that as well. So I think we would work with all 3 anyway, just to make sure we have a good policy in place, something that's appropriate, something that will work for the schools and for our police department, as well, especially for the students.
So I would amend my motion to include Counselor Finnegan.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Per the motion by Mr. Huckman, do we have a
Second.
second? Seconded by Mr. Amico. A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico,
Yes.
Mr. Arnott,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Olympio,
yes,
Mrs. Dunn,
Yes.
Great.
And just so people know, generally, anytime even in the past when we worked on these policies, they've always been referred to council. Anything involving the police and the schools generally are pretty much as a formality, but they are reviewed by the city solicitor, whoever it is at that time.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. So I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Kerbel. And yeah, I was just thinking, I know the other two topics will probably be lengthy. I was just thinking we could take the donations now and then go to the other topics. Are you muted?
Sorry, my dog was barking in the background, so I had to mute. I
problem.
have two checks from people from New York Life that made to the medical assistant student activities account, and they're both $500 each. So I'm asking the school committee to accept the first check for $500 to the medical assisting student activities account.
Motion to receive with gratitude.
Great.
Second.
You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Arnottis. And again, this was from New York Life. Mr. Dan Collins, who's has been wonderful to our community and has donated many times in the past. A parent, coach, business person in the city, and he's been wonderful. So roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico,
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Olympio,
yes,
Mrs. Dunn,
Yes.
And I would like the school committee to accept a second $500 check from New York Life. Dan Collins again for the medical assist program.
Motion to receive with gratitude.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Arnottis. Roll call vote.
Mr. Amico,
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis,
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Olympio,
yes,
Mrs. Dunn,
Yes. And before we move on, I do have something to add to that.
Please, go ahead, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you. And Dr. Kerbel may not even realize this, but Mr. Collins has been extremely generous. And actually, this spring is when we were going to be presenting him with the MASC Partner in Education Award for his amazing assistance. You've seen a tiny piece of what that gentleman has given to our schools, and it gave us a lot of pride to submit that request for, to honor him. And unfortunately, with circumstances as they are, we haven't been able to honor him and have an appropriate celebration. But now we can add to that plaque and put another line on it and thank him continuously for all his help.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. That was well said. Dr. Kerbel, turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. And then I hope someday I'll be able to meet Dan Collins in person.
You will.
Doesn't matter. Once a Tanner, always a Tanner, they say, right? So someday I'll meet Mr. Collins.
That's
Okay, I want
right.
to talk about graduation update, and everybody's grappling with this, and Dr. Lord has a team, and he can talk more about that. So Dr. Lord, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kerbel. And through the chair, the graduation committee has been in place for over a month now. It's a group of people involved at the high school, led by Karen McGovern and several teachers and students. And we plan graduation on a regular basis. They really kicked it into high gear 10 days ago when the governor closed schools for the remainder of the year, and we have to come up with some different plan for graduation. The faculty was vetted with the process for closing out school for the seniors over the next several weeks. That went out yesterday to everyone. And graduation is still in a bit of flux right now about what exactly the kids want to do. The team attended New England Association of Schools and Conferences webinar today that involved several high schools across New England and how they're handling their graduations to get some more ideas. I think you may have already received the latest 3 ideas that seem to be getting some traction in the population right now for the kids. And certainly like to hear some feedback from the school committee about how they would like to do it. No one wants a virtual graduation. Most people want to try and stick with the 5th of June if we can. And most folks would like to try to do some sort of public walk across the track. We could videotape speeches and then come back to their families, maybe in groups. Maybe we could divide the class into 4 groups. Anyway, the team saw their last presentation today. I'm meeting with all the senior class officers who attended that meeting, as well as all the teachers that are involved in the planning for graduation tomorrow morning. And we'll come up with a final plan. But love to have some feedback from the committee and folks in the community if they have some ideas about how to run graduation. There's a lot of different options out there, but we'll try to get a decision out by the end of this week. And Mr. Amico, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, through the chair. And Dr. Lord, thank you for working on this, and thank you to all the groups and that are working on graduation. I think the mayor said this last week. He said these graduates deserve the best possible graduation ceremony that we can provide for them. And with that said, I'm thinking the June 1st date, June 5th date might be too early. You know, if we go with June 5th, chances are we're not going to be able to give them what they really want. So my suggestion is, and I'll probably make this in a form of a motion after I hear from some other school committee members, I'm thinking we should go for a home run, go for the grand slam. Let's look at a date like July 31st with possible rain dates and scheduling dates, depend on if we have to have 1 or 2 or 3, 4 ceremonies. Let's look at hypothetically a July 31st date with an August 1st, August 2nd rain date or scheduling date. And this would almost give us close to 90 days, probably 85 days or so, to really let this pandemic maybe, flatten the curve and maybe get some more updates from public health. Because if we have one on June 5th, we're not having a traditional graduation. As much as we want to, chances are, if I'm a betting man, we're not having one that would be suitable for the kids. But maybe if we extend it into the summer and get it to them before they move on to college, maybe we can do something on the field. Maybe we can do something that's more traditional, more what we've done in the past, and to really credit them for the great work that they've done. But I'll yield to the school committee and see what they think about that. But if everyone's on board, I'd love to set a date for the July 31st or at some point during that time and really throw these kids a bash because they deserve it.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Amico. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. The June date, I think, is much too early to have any type of possibility of a normal type of graduation. I like those dates, Mr. Amico. Those are good dates. And even if those dates come up and we're still not allowed to have that many people together, which I'm suspecting we may not be able to, then we have the alternative take place on those dates. The smaller groups coming through, definitely giving the kids an opportunity to do some type of walkthrough, separated into 4 different groups. Dr. Lord, was there any particular reason why the people that you met with was still sticking to that June 5th date, or was there something we don't know about? You're muted, Dr. Lord.
Sorry. What I've heard so far is that some students are going to be heading off to the military. Some will need to get into their college orientations in July, and they might not be able to make it. If it was on a Saturday, depending on how far their colleges are away, they might be able to do it. So maybe that Saturday, the 1st of August might be a better one to choose if you want to move forward. But it's mostly because some of the kids will be out into the workforce, or they'll be getting into the initial parts of some colleges and the military.
So just so I can get clarification. So I was under the impression that most of the kids that were leaving for college, it would be more like the middle of August. I guess like football and some stuff starts a little bit earlier.
Right.
When would the military go? What would that be?
I'd have to get some dates for the kids that are involved with that for you. That's what has come up in my conversations with the graduation committee.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to make sure everybody.
Usually June.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Bev.
I'm sorry.
No, you would know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually June and July.
June and July.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes it can be the day after our traditional graduation.
Okay, well, that poses a problem. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I don't, can you get back to us on, you know, if, is that a definite factor for some kids if we move the date?
Certainly, I can, we're meeting with the whole team tomorrow, and I'll have much more details of what their interests are going forward. And we can also talk to the guidance team and see which students are involved in a activity that would necessitate an earlier graduation date.
Yeah, that would be very important.
Yep, I'll get that for you.
And I know that the union has expressed that they are on board with, you know, whatever we come up with. They're definitely they're gonna be there and they're gonna participate. Thank you, Dr. Roy.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Anybody else would like to speak? I'll go, Mr. Arnottis.
Chairman?
No. Thank you. Just quickly, I agree with overall moving the date in general, but I didn't know that, Dr. Lord, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's very helpful information. So it sounds like to me, you know, there's almost two avenues that we can look at here. You know, and I think August 1st would be, if we were to push it back, potentially the date to look at. But I think if we're going to continue to move towards June 5th, I think we would definitely need to have that conversation of an unusual graduation, probably not walking across the field and that angle that we normally have. And then if we were to do something in August, hopefully we're in a different position. But I think it's very important either way to obviously take into consideration of our public health department and folks like that. But it would be good to hear from the kids and see what realistically they would appreciate having. And it sounds like you're doing that, but I think if we can create something that makes them happy and is also realistic, I think that should be our goal at the end of this.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, just some information I'd like to share with the committee. We just had to postpone our daughter's wedding. It was going to be the end of June.
Mm.
And so it's been a really, really rough decision, and but it was the right one. And she and her fiance made a good decision after a lot of investigation, a lot of thought. One of the things that figured into that was the fact that the way that the governor and other governors have been rolling out the gradual relaxation of some of the requirements on the social distancing has been, they've gone from no more than 5 people in a group to now no more than 10. The anticipated the thought is that that's going to open up to groups of 25 perhaps by the end of June. By the end of July it might be possibly 50. And that's all speculation, and it's based upon what the process has been so far. Trying to decide on how to handle something, definitely right now, June 5th, we would not be able to have our traditional graduation in any way, shape, or form unless we put into place a lot of the social distancing requirements. We're seeing graduations with the military academies, the way that they're doing it. But I am fearful that even if restrictions come off between now and August 1st, it's still not going to be enough to have have a graduation as close as possible to what the students had hoped for. My input in this, from what I've heard from seniors, and I've actively sought some out to find out what they want. the biggest thing they wanted was the chance to all be together. And in order to do that, excuse me, if it required a a virtual graduation of their families watching online, but the students being allowed to participate in the graduation, that was one of the things that they mentioned. A lot of them came up with that. So I know there's a lot of different thoughts. It's a very hard decision for the kids, but I do want to thank you all for making sure that they are having input in this and that we're trying as much as possible to give them a really great graduation and something memorable that they will be able to look back on and understand that times were different, but that we still gave them a good send off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Miko?
Thank you through the chair to Dr. Lord. I believe Danvers is looking at a July graduation, and I'm sure they also have students heading off to the military. My only thought is maybe to reach out to them to see if they've thought about something, because the possibility is that we could have two send-offs. We could have a typical graduation. We could have a send-off for those great students who are going to be heroes, and almost recognize them as graduates and moving on to the military. I think that would be a nice touch. But again, maybe if we reach out to other high schools that have already set up graduations for later on this summer, maybe we can see what they were thinking and if they have plans to do something for their seniors who are going into the service.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of different ways that communities are handling graduation, and it's basically what the communities think is best for their kids. I did speak with one group that is going to be moving to the August 1st date. They're going to plan to have their football field be the graduation seating area for the students, and the parents are going to be on both sides of the of the whole arena, and they're going to be 6 feet apart on both sides. They have a very big facility for doing that. I've also spoken with another one that's going to be having their kids walk through their indoor track, and the families would be watching it online, and then the teachers would be in the stands, in the bleachers on the indoor track. And there's similar ones like that with outdoor track where the kids walk around the track and the teachers are in the track and parents are watching from home. Anyway, we're going to get the right one for us. I will touch base with the Danvers folks and see if they have something something similar with kids that do need to get off into different post-secondary experiences right after the traditional graduation date. And I'll bring that back to you, but let me bring that to the team tomorrow. We'll be meeting again tomorrow to finalize this plan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Lord, and your team for working so hard on this very, very important decision. We do need to acknowledge our seniors and the hard work that they've put in their careers here in Peabody. And I'm going to present what is probably a very significant minority position. I think we can still have graduation, and I think we can still have graduation on June 5th. We have a very small senior class at Peabody High School this year. We have a very large campus. We can take groups of students and stage them in various parking lots to line up alphabetically and proceed by walking through those parking lots around the track to receive their diplomas while maintaining physical distancing. We have a very, very talented Peabody Access Television community that is able to broadcast the event into people's homes live. Parents are able to stay at home to watch this event live. We can also have a screen or multiple screens with audio set up on the baseball field and the upper field for those parents that aren't able to receive direct access to a Peabody Access Television transmission, whether it's because they have DirecTV or because they don't have internet or Wi-Fi access, and set up seating for those folks that is socially distant. We already have a police presence that's already budgeted for our graduation event. We can use that police presence to ensure that nobody outside of the graduating class goes in the parking lots, and ensure the safety and health of our students and faculty. We've already seen a plan where the faculty are willing to sit in the bleachers on the football field, socially distant, which there's certainly adequate space for that to occur. We can still accomplish this on June 5th in a responsible and safe manner under the CDC guidelines and under the guidelines that have been promulgated by the city of Peabody and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I realize that that's a minority position. I realize that there may be people out there who are less comfortable with what I'm saying than what Mr. Amico is saying, and that certainly is extremely important. I think Ms. Dunn is correct. We need to do something for these kids in a big grand slam kind of way, and encompass as many of these students as possible, so that they do have as best of a graduation experience as we can possibly give them. But I don't want to throw out June 5th that quickly. I think it's still something possible and still something that perhaps we should have a conversation with our graduates and their families to see who or how many would be comfortable with appearing at Peabody High on June 5th.
You reminded me of one other option that had some ideas that was floated around by the students, and that is to have a large area at the North Shore Mall dedicated to a drive-in style graduation where the cars are every other parking space, and at one end of the parking lot is the traditional setup. And it would be a long walk for the kids to come and get their diplomas, but they would get out of their cars, walk up to that space, but it would be a very large place where you could sit maybe 500 cars every other parking space. That was another idea that that happened.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one more.
Is that you, Mr.
Yeah.
Olympio?
Yes.
I'll turn to you, Mr. Olympio. You haven't spoke yet.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we going to be receiving any updates in the next 2 to 3 weeks? What the governor's positions has to be on this, because there's just so many cities and towns that are wrestling with this type of dilemma. And my fear is maybe if they relax things a little bit, we set a date out way out, say in July, but then maybe it turns out that we could maybe do something sooner than later. How much time would we need to relax? Let's just say we set a date out. It's July 31st. And then let's just say the end of May, the governor comes out and they loosen up some restrictions that might be able to work in some fashion. And we could maybe have a ceremony sooner than later. How much time would we need? I guess this is for Dr. Laura, that we could maybe move the date up, not so much paint ourselves, in a corner.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point, Mr. Olympio. The commissioner has said cities and towns need to pick what's right for their communities, and it's a wide range. Some are doing completely virtual, some are doing the things that we've described, some are pushing them off till later in the summer. It needs to be what we want to do. If we do get some guidance, that would be really helpful, but I don't know that there's going to be anything more definite coming forward.
So
I think Mr. Amico has his hand up.
Yeah, go to Mrs. Dunn was first, then Mr. Amico. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the current restrictions are, May 18th? Is
Yes.
that the? Okay. So if I would say if we were able to wait till May 18th, we might know a little bit more. But I do want to say, and please mark this on your calendar, I agree with Mr. Hockman today. And I yeah, mark it down.
Not to joke around, but Elizabeth, I'm coming to see you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
For those of you old enough to get that reference.
I really do think that no matter what date we pick,
Right.
we are pretty much going to still face significant restrictions. And I do think that whether we have it July 31st or June 5th, it's still going to be very difficult. And I would like to see if we could do it June 5th. And as I said, look into having the students sitting 6 feet apart. We would have to try to figure out what to do with the family members who want to attend, whether that be virtual or up on the field. That's a great idea about up on the field. But to me, the whole heart of the graduation is the kids. And I know they want to be together and they want to be on that field. And that's what I would like to make possible. If we have to put the seats 12 feet apart, if we have to get matching masks with a Tana bull on the front, whatever we need to do to make that possible. And I would like to see us stick with June 5th, only because that's the date that was anticipated. And I don't think changing the date is actually going to matter as far as how we carry it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. I do think I'm expecting from information I've heard is that the governor will be making an announcement on a number of positions prior to certainly May 18th. I don't think he's going to comment specifically on graduations. I think that he will be leading that up to cities and towns, but I do expect further guidance from him, from his office, in the days ahead as to May 18th and what we can expect. But I think this is one we'll have to make on our own as to what direction we want to go. Mr. Miko, I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'll yield to Mr. Olympio. He had the floor, and then I'll take it from there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Olympio. I think I did cut you off. You have the floor.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean,
I'm sorry.
I would certainly, Mr. Hockman, Ms. Dunn, I kind of tend to agree with them as far as doing something sooner than later, because I've actually, I hate to be a downer, but I've actually lost hope that things will be normal or close to normal anytime soon. I don't see what the difference is going to be on June 5th versus August 31st. I feel like things just aren't going to change. We've going on now 2+ months of flattening the curve, and I don't think anything's going to change. So what I'm afraid of is we're waiting for a perfect opportunity that's never going to come. And if that was the case, I was thinking the day after Thanksgiving, but I understand that's probably not practical. So I think Mr. Hockman and Ms. Dunn are onto something there as far as doing something sooner than later and getting creative. I mean, we have certainly the baseball field also too available for families and things like that to create some distance. But I don't think anything's going to change from now until August. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. Miko, go back to you.
Thank you, through the chair. And I do agree with Mr. Olympio, Mr. Hockman, and Ms. Dunn. I'd love to have it on June 5th. My thought process was that if we wait, and even this morning, the White House projections for late May into June, and these are just projections, but these are 2,000 deaths in the country per day during that time period. I'm just thinking that if we do wait till the end of July, maybe things have leveled off in the Boston area, which is definitely a hot spot. And again, all these plans and all our ideas and all our opinions, they kind of mean almost nothing when it comes down to it, because the people wearing the white coats, those smart people in those labs, those smart doctors, our public health people, they're going to tell us what to do. And part of the reasons why we're in this problem is because those people weren't listened to when things were out there. And, whether we want to agree to it or not, they're going to lead us on this. When the governor of Massachusetts is listening to those public health officials, he's taken his guidance from them. And I think we're going to be in the same boat. We can schedule dates, we can think of ideas, but if it doesn't pass the smell test with public health, we're going to be very, very limited in what we can do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Amico. Good discussion. Anybody else like to comment at this time? All right, Dr. Lord, we'll turn it back to you. I know still a lot of discussions have to take place on your end with your team.
Mr.
Anything
Hockman has
further you want to
Uh,
his
add?
hand up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, did I miss somebody?
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right,
It's not about graduation specifically, but about some of the things that we talked about yesterday in terms of seniors returning books and materials and things, picking up items as well and things like that. We talked about a plan, or Dr. Lord talked about a plan and a traffic pattern that had people arriving safely and continuing in cars around and zigzagging through parking lots and coming up along the east side of the school to do that. And we talked about, putting some banners together and some balloons. And I don't know if Dr. Lord had an opportunity to explore that. It's only been about 24 hours. So I don't know if just wanted to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, we had, I learned there is a big banner somewhere up in the guidance area. And we just had our first day with teachers back. So I'm expecting the guidance staff that are responsible for that to be in tomorrow. And I'll know if this banner actually exists, but I believe it says congratulations graduates. We could hang it off the east side of the building, and that would be a fun thing, I think, for the kids. I haven't seen this banner, but I've heard that there is something like that in a closet somewhere.
All right. Well, and even if it doesn't exist, if we can acquire one,
Sure.
I'm sure we can make an appropriation to do that. And, I would also, like to see as much as we can every time, and it's going to be an infrequent event, but every time our seniors are on the high school campus, like I said, it shouldn't be frequently, but when they do get up there, have some sort of acknowledgement and recognition for them, whether it be a balloon archway, a banner, something along those lines. I think that as much as we can do for them, we should.
I agree completely. We'll have a detailed plan out for your review shortly. Give me another 48 hours or so and we'll get something out.
Thanks, Doc.
great, thank you, Dr. Lord.
Mr. Amico has his hand up too.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Amico.
Thank you, through the chair. Dr. Lord, speaking of graduation, and we typically do this, we usually have, some of the seniors showing up at our meetings and they're recognized. Could you, I don't know if you have that information now, but maybe at a later date, could you announce maybe the top 5 or top 10 seniors? And I'm sure they're watching it and their parents are watching. It'd be great for them to really hear their names and their great achievements.
Absolutely. Quite ironically, I have them right here in my hand. It was going to be a big surprise, but I will share that with you now. I've already contacted our class of 2020 valedictorian and invited her to prepare a speech for her classmates. Rebecca Trong is our valedictorian for class of 2020. Alexandra Turco is our salutarian. Congratulations to those two. Diana Lee is our number 3. Anna Tetzlin is number 4, and Samantha Trong is number 5. We finally got all the calculations done for their GPAs. Wonderful work, all those students. Looking forward to hearing what they have to say to their classmates. We're going to be vetting their speeches in the next week or two, and Michaeline Haig has agreed to check it for diction and make sure that the pronunciation is all accurate. So I'm sure if it gets past Mrs. Haig, it's going to be a wonderful speech.
Great. That's terrific. That was a great suggestion, Mr. Amico. Thank you for that information. Congratulations to all those students. That's unbelievable. All right, turn it back to you, Dr. Lord. I think you were going to speak regarding the NEASC report.
Yeah, I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to share my screen. There's like a 4 or 5 slide presentation I think would be of value for people to see. I'm assuming you can see my screen now, and I'm going to share a review. Share with people in groups, done. Present. So what we're looking at here is the NEASC's overview for our accreditation report. I'll just go through a few slides here to highlight the elements of the report that is currently online and people can read at their convenience. It's rather lengthy, but I do want to take just a few minutes to give folks an overview because this is a very important process. Schools go through this once every 10 years, and we were involved in an accreditation visit last fall, I think the third or fourth week of September. So let's talk a little bit about the New England Association of Schools and Colleges and their overview. The mission of the NEASC is to look at the quality of instruction going on in schools across New England. The entire nation is divided into 8 large regions. The New England Association of Schools and Colleges is the oldest, it's been around for about 180 years, and they've been doing this work going into buildings, colleges, kindergarten, all the way through high school. Mostly high schools are involved in this process, so that when students see their transcript at the top, it says fully accredited by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. The way it works is we are accredited based on 7 standards. The first standard is on your school's mission. The second standard is on your school's curriculum. The third is on instruction in the classroom. The fourth one is on assessment. The fifth one is on leadership and culture. The sixth standard is on school resources, the nurse and library and so forth. And the seventh standard is the one on community resources for the school. The bottom line are commendations and recommendations that have been shared with the faculty a couple of weeks ago. There's around 60 commendations, and I'm going to share with you some of the most important ones that I think are most value. And there are some recommendations where they give us our direction of where we need to go next. And again, there's about 50 or 60 recommendations for us to take our school to the next level. This is a very thorough report. A team of 15 people were here for 4 days. They read our self-study, they visited classrooms, they talked with school committee members, with community members, with parents, with students. They shadowed students during the course of the day. They got a really good feel for what's going on in Peabody High School, and they illustrated it in that report. Again, that report is online on the district website. So this is the one that I'm most proud of. This is the commendation that they mentioned, the district's decision to adopt the vision of the graduate in all 10 Peabody Public Schools. This is something that Kara Murtagh saw last summer. These are the elements of the vision of the graduate that were presented to the entire faculty back last August. And the reason they're so important is because we're not only awarding students with respect to their grades, A, B, C, D, F, honor roll, and so forth, we're also measuring their success in the classroom with respect to these 7 key skills that they need to have before they graduate. Whether you're an effective communicator or an artist innovator, a team player, all of our teachers are assessing at least 2 of these components in all of their classes and putting them on report cards. I shared with all the students right before the break, and I believe the mayor was part of one of these presentations, the fourth quarter report card that the students are going to receive this year is going to be the bottom line for how proficient they are in each of these 7 elements. These are the 7 elements that colleges are looking for. Yes, they're looking for a good GPA, but they want to know if a student can work with other students. Can they be a good team player? And the kids' fourth quarter report card will illustrate the degree of proficiency with which they become a team player in some of their classes. Are they a good problem solver in some of their classes? Not just mathematics. Are you a problem solver in gym, for example? Are you an effective communicator, not just in English, but are you an effective communicator in your art class, for example? Are you an artist innovator in English, for example? Can you manage yourself in a successful manner? Are you a global thinker? Are you thinking outside your community when you're thinking for your future? The high school faculty over the last 3 years have developed rubrics that they're using in the classroom that are school-wide that any teacher can use to assess these 7 elements. And I'm so proud of this because our team presented to the NEASC Commission this vision of the graduate about 3 months ago. And as a result, we've been invited to speak to the Massachusetts Principals Association this July, and again to the school committee, the Massachusetts School Committee presentation in November. So this is something we should really be proud of, being able to illustrate not only A, B, C, D, F and traditional grading on report cards, but in addition, student proficiency with respect to the vision of the graduate. Our ability to take this information, K-8, and figure out what it means to be a team player in kindergarten, or what it means to be a global thinker in 3rd grade, what it means to be a problem solver in a 6th grade exploratory class. The teachers will start to work with this in the future and be able to really illustrate these key skills that not only colleges are looking for, but also that the workforce is looking for. This is the kinds of things that people want to know about. Not only are they doing well on their report cards, but also are they proficient in these 7 main skills. And this is one of the things that I'm so proud of working with Kara Murtag on, but she saw this. We had a wonderful presentation last August on all of these elements of the graduate. And so that's a highlight that we saw from the accreditation team, the district's decision to pull all 10 of these, pull all these into our schools over time. So here are some of the larger commendations. Move this up over here. So the first thing, the curriculum documents that are inclusive of depth of understanding and application of knowledge through inquiry and problem-solving skills, as well as higher order thinking skills. We have a very solid curriculum at the high school. Our teachers are really getting our kids to think, and they're doing some really good activities in the classroom that are trying to push that knowledge. This is a nice one here from standard number 3, the culture of collegiality in which teachers share professional knowledge, both informally and formally. The commitment of the faculty and leadership to implementing and assessing the vision of the graduate, the implementation of common planning time, instructional rounds, and data teams within the school day. This is a big one, folks. Not many high schools are doing this. I'm privileged to sit on the NEASC commission. I'm one of 30 commissioners in New England, and there are very few schools that during the school day, like all the math teachers at the high school are free period 1. They're free period 1 this year. They will be free period 1 next year, so they can have casual conversations, what they're talking about up here, formally and informally. Formally and informally, those abilities for teachers to share during the school day are really important for them to improve their instruction. The formal professional learning meeting happens once a week during the school day for every department in the building. It's a really rare ability to do that, and one of the things that is really accelerating the learning going on at Peabody High. The implementation of common planning time, we read that. The extensive health services provided free of charge for students with and without insurance. The health center down in the first floor is a wonderful service to our kids. And the other commendation we received, the support of community businesses and higher educational partnerships and the commendable relationships it produces between students and the community. And this is a really great example of some of the commendations that are out there. The school committee, let's see if I can move this a little bit. There's one more in there that I can't seem to hide. There's one underneath here that says the one-to-one program. The one-to-one Chromebook program was also recognized by the committee. So there it is. So what I recommend is that folks go online and look at the report. At the end of each of the 7 standards are about 6 or 8 commendations. Take a look at some of the wonderful things going on in the high school. It's really wonderful to see some of our peers recognizing the good work going on in our schools. So the next thing we're going to talk about are the recommendations, and these are ways that we can improve, things that we can get better at. This first one here is on the 2nd standard, ensure that staffing levels, instructional materials, and equipment are sufficient to deliver curriculum at a high quality and sustainable level. Next one is on standard 4, expand the instructional rounds model. Instructional rounds, for people that are watching, are where teachers go into one another's classrooms and assess the teaching going on in there, but as teachers helping teachers. And we have a wonderful leadership team of teachers that are going into one another's classroom, looking at instruction, trying to get better at their craft, and looking at some of the wonderful things going on in one another's classroom. That instructional rounds team, led by Jared Haas and Chris Vassar, has really been great. So we'd like to take that to scale, include a majority of the teachers. Right now, I think there's about 20 or 25 teachers involved in these instructional rounds. We'd like to take that to scale and get all teachers involved in looking at one another's work in the classroom. Another recommendation is to provide professional development for teachers on how to improve the variety of common summative assessments and develop authentic assessments in addition to traditional chapter unit tests. If one thing that you'll hear over the course of time with the NEASC is that assessment drives instruction. The kinds of ways we're assessing students in the classroom is driving how we're going to be teaching them. Just like the MCAS. MCAS is an assessment, so we are teaching to the MCAS in many cases. What I'm happy to say is we've developed a lot of assessments already to the vision of the graduate, and our teachers are teaching to those skill sets that are part of our mission. Here's a big one down here, develop and implement a formal program or process through which each student has an adult in the school, in addition to the school guidance counselor who knows the student well and assists the student in achieving the school's vision of the graduate for students. That one is speaking to the Tanner time discussion that's been going on of late. Here's the big one, and this one dovetails into the statement of interest for a brand new high school. Ensure the school site and plant support the delivery of high quality school programs and services by addressing the outstanding issues, including the inadequate HVAC and electrical systems, insufficient bathrooms, broken and non-functioning lighting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The building, the facility is needs some attention, and we've submitted, either Dr. Kerbel's doing it today or tomorrow, a statement of interest for us to get a new high school for the city of Peabody. The NASC has been very helpful in providing us with some strong language that we can include in that report in our request for a new high school. I'm very optimistic that the Massachusetts School Building Authority at some point will honor our request for a brand new building, and it will really be a wonderful thing. What's happened as a result of this is we are now on warning status for accreditation. Warning status means that we address certain things within certain timeframes to the NESC in order to be able to maintain accreditation. So the fact that we've actually submitted a statement of interest will get us off warning status for for standard 7. The other standard that we're on warning for is standard 3 on instruction. And we'll be talking about that with a leadership team in a couple of days about how to meet those expectations. But the idea of the entire NESC report is for us to get better and better and better over time. And again, like with the commendations, I recommend folks go take a look at that report and look at the recommendations on where we need to go in the future. These are just a handful of them. There's about 50 or 60 commendations and about 50 or 60 recommendations for us to take us to the next level. I think that was it. I'm going to stop sharing here and open the floor to questions. There is the NEASC report, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look it over, if you have any questions on it, but there's some great things going on at our school, and some ways forward that we need to go together. Any questions?
Great, thank you, Dr. Lord, and I greatly appreciate, I know we all do, your hard work and what you've been able to bring to the high school. So thank you for all your work during this time. Open it up now to committee members. Any questions or comments for Dr. Lord? All right. Seeing none. Dr. Lord, thank you so much.
Says Beverly has a question. Beverly?
Sorry, Beverly, Mrs. Dunn, please go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize. I couldn't get that raise the hand thing to work quick enough. I'd like to add my thanks to Dr. Lord and to the staff. This was a lengthy process to prepare for the NEASC evaluation, and they really did a great job getting our school ready for that. And one of the nice things reading that report are to see so many of the programs in the schools being commendated. And I'd like to see us be able to highlight those many times when we are talking about the high school, being able to tout a lot of those great things about our program. I also want to note that we already know we have deficiencies with that building, and I would really like to thank Dr. Lord and Dr. Kerbel. The SOI for the high school actually does include a mention about the NEASC report and the current status that NEASC has put us on because of the physical plant. So that examination of our building and the notation of all the conditions and the difficulty of providing a 21st century learning experience for students in the current high school was noted, and it will be helpful going forward with the MSBA process. So thank you for all your hard work and for your
Sure.
attention to all those details.
I'll leave you with one story I shared with the faculty about maybe 2 or 3 months ago. When they came into the faculty meeting, they were listening to Kathy Matea's song 455 Rocket. It doesn't matter what you got for a coat of paint on the outside of your car. It matters what you got under the hood. And we've got some of the most outstanding educators I've ever worked with here at Peabody High. And get ready, Peabody High is going to get ready for an academic smoke show. We're going to be illustrating the great work going on here with the Principals Association in July, with the School Committee Association in November. And there's just some outstanding academic and social and civic opportunities for kids at Peabody High, regardless of the status of the building.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lord. Academic smoke show. I like it. I like the sound of that. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Lord at this time?
Mr. Amico?
Mr. Amico? Yep.
Actually, through the chair, Dr. Lord, thank you for that presentation. I actually had a question for Dr. Kerbel. I don't know if in regards to the 2021 budget, if I can go back to that, or I can yield and we can wait.
Yeah, just I want to make sure. Any further questions for Dr. Lord before we move forward? Great. Thank you, Dr. Lord. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to you, Mr. Amico. Dr. Kerbel.
Great, thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Kerbel, and I would say also our business manager, Mr. Scanlon. So as we know, they've been working on this budget, and thank you so much for, there's a lot of uncertainties. And one of the uncertainties, I think from a logistics standpoint is whether or not, let's face it, whether or not we'll be in a traditional school setting come September, or we're going to be in a remote school setting come September, like we're doing now. So I guess for me as a school committee member, knowing that there's a possibility of cuts or adjustments being made, I almost would like to have not two budgets, but almost a plan A and a plan B. And I'll give an example of a football coach getting ready for a football game. You have your starting quarterback and he's 100% and he's ready to go. You're going to stick with your plan A. But if he's banged up and is injured, you may have to go to your backup, which your game plan might have to change because of that. So with that said, I think if there's a possibility that we can look at not two budgets, but in some areas, and we can talk offline, in some areas looking at the budget from a traditional going back to school A budget and a B budget remote learning as we're doing now, because I think that may change some dynamics and some spending and some positions in the future.
Yep. I know you can't see me. I don't know what happened to me, but you lost visual. Anyway, you don't mind if I answer that, Mayor Betancourt?
No, please do.
So I think it's a good point, Mr. Amico. I really do. Because if we go to remote learning for any extensive time, certainly I think we may have to change things up the way we do things. And I think it's less costly as well. So good point. I think we have to do multiple plans. And I know that Dr. Vidal is listening, and he and I are talking tomorrow as we meet every Wednesday. So we'll have to talk about that in-house. And so we can get ready for the school committee that way. No, I think it's a good point. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll go forward with the agenda. There's no written communications today, so we will go to subcommittee reports. Education Subcommittee, Mr. Hockman, any update?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank the administration, leadership team, principals, teachers, special education department, our special education coordinator, and everyone, paraprofessionals, specialists, and everyone who's worked so hard to put remote learning in its format that started yesterday for the middle school and is continuing, I think, through the high school. Thank you all for that. I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and you've all put in a lot of time and effort to make sure that our students are receiving some instruction and thank everyone, including teachers, if I haven't mentioned them already, with that. I do want to also caution, and I know, or at least I think the city council is considering taking up special permits for big building projects, which could potentially have tear downs and demolition associated with them. I just want to caution everybody that our homes are now our classrooms. And if there was a construction project taking place near a school, we would typically chime in on that. I just want to make sure that we're all aware that classrooms exist all across our city now, and that we're cognizant of that before there are significant construction projects taking place. With that, I just wanted to wish everybody well with the online learning and thank everybody again for their efforts in accomplishing it.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Finance Subcommittee, Mrs. Carpenter.
Nothing to report, but it is National Teacher Appreciation Week. So just want to say we appreciate you all. And this turns into families now as well. They're teachers. So we appreciate all of you.
Yes.
But nothing to report on my committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter.
Yeah.
School safety, Mr. Olympio.
Nothing new to report.
Thank you. Athletics and wellness, Mr. Hockman.
No, but if we can go back to school safety, I want to say that the schools are as safe as they've ever been. I think, on a sad note, April was the first month in a long, long time where there was no school shootings. And it's obviously for different reasons, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that school safety is an extremely important subject matter, and I'm glad we're still talking about it.
Thank you. Quality and standards, Mrs. Dunn.
Nothing to report other than what was referred to the committee tonight.
Great, thank you. Parent and student advisory boards, Mrs. Dunn.
Nothing to report today.
Okay. Building and grounds, Mr. Amico.
Nothing to report today. Thank you.
Okay. Special education parent advisory board, Mr. Olympio.
Nothing new to report.
And city council legislative delegation, Mr. Arnottis.
Nothing new to report.
All right, thank you all. We'll hold that new business item to the next agenda, and our next meeting is May 19th, 2020. We'll have it at the same time, 3 p.m. That Tuesday afternoon. And anything before we break? All right,
Yes,
thank you so
Mayor.
much.
Yes, Mayor Bencourt, sorry.
Yes, Dr.
I had
Kerr.
to unmute myself. And I have a question about refunding student fees, and I want to refer to Joe Scanlon to talk a little bit about it. Joe's put together a memo regarding student fees and fees that families have paid. I mean, regarding funding, I think this came up yesterday during the Finance Subcommittee meeting. So,
All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I,
Yeah, Mr. Scanlon, please, go ahead.
can I share the screen? All right, I'm
Yep.
going to share the screen. Just give me 1 sec. Oh, you have to enable me to share the screen, Mr. Mayor.
Joe, I just set you up. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Wait 1 sec. All right, you should be seeing a memorandum to Mark from me about the refund of student fees. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through it because it's pretty well straightforward. So what I've been doing is following up on the various areas that student fees have been paid in, and that our intent is to ensure that these fees are refunded in full and partial, or credit is applied. In terms of the days that we've had versus the days that we haven't had, it's basically 61.4% of the school year has occurred and 15% has not. So in the middle of the page here, I put some guidelines in terms of how we're pursuing these refunds, and now I'm going to jump into the specific areas. So we looked at AP exams, and no fees were collected for those, so there are no fees to return. Spoke with athletics, same thing. The spring sports, the fees were not collected because of the policy and how athletic fees are collected. Number 3, the McCarthy Integrated Preschool. We do have fees that have come in, 22 students, a total of 22,000 that'll have to be returned. Those fees are paid via check, so we're going to have to return those by check. I say it later in the memo, but every check that we issue, that means that the vendor, the family has to be in the system as a vendor. So it'll take us a few minutes to get them, updated. The Paso Savante, she hasn't sent the information in yet, but those would be processed through our office as well. School lunch, just a few, I think 3 is what Maureen said. Parents have requested. We would prefer to have credits applied to the system. It's just nothing that the policy, we don't have an existing policy, but from my prior experience with my school buck, credits can be applied. So that's what I'll pursue, is just on these 3 parents, is just applying a credit to their accounts. Number 6, for student activities, John Simmons has collected some payments for trips. That's from student activities, and he said he's already taken care of getting those checks back out to the students. The last 2 are a little bit substantial. The student parking fees, we collected fees from 237 students and fee $100 a year. That would work out to 61%, or took me a minute to figure it out, $61.40 per pupil. So if you multiply that difference, which is the 3860, times the 237 students, it works out to $9,000 that we need to return. So I did ask Gail and whether or not it would make sense to try and apply credits to these, but most of the students are seniors or second year juniors. So we really have to anticipate that these are going to all need to be returned by check. So that process will be each of the student families set up as a vendor, checks processed through AP, warrant will be approved at the school committee, which is why I wanted to cover it, because hopefully it'll be on your next school committee warrant. And then lastly, the transportation fees. We've collected $329,000 to date at $300 per pupil. That works out to 1,100 students. And the return portion of that would be $115.80 times 1,100 students equals $127,000. So those also would need to be issued as checks to all of those students, unless we were to apply those as credits into the next year. I would want to end on that and ask, for some comments, whether or not, especially on these 2 here, issuing credits, issuing payments back. So any other questions, please let me know. Let me unshare.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scanlon. This wasn't on our agenda, so I want to be very careful here, but if there's a couple of questions, I think Mrs. Dunn, you had your hand raised.
Yes, but it's on a following topic. It's not on this one. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anybody, I can't see if anybody's. All right, any questions for Mr. Scanlon? Thank you for that report. That I think we've all received a number of questions regarding that from parents and families, and students. So it's good to know that that's being addressed, and hopefully that'll be at our next meeting. So thank you for that. Mrs. Dunn, did you have something before we break?
Yes, actually, I'd like to call on Dr. Kerbel and Dr. Lord. Something very exciting happened a half an hour before our meeting. Dr. Kerbel pushed a button, and I think he should let everyone know. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Aren't you nice, Beverly? So we submitted the SOI for the high school for a new building. And just want to thank Chris and your staff. They did an excellent job, wonderful job. Now, nothing is easy. So of course, the words were too much. We had 50,000 characters and then Chris had to redo, and Beverly did some editing. Jim Hafey was involved in terms of making sure the mechanical and some of the questions were answered. Joe was great in terms of making sure that we had the right budget, not the budget amount, but an explanation about the budget. Okay, and I want to thank Mayor Bencourt. You and I had to sign off through some type of e-script or whatever. And it's always nervous. I'm always nervous hitting the submit button, but when they say you were successful, it's terrific. Now let's just hope that good things happen. So we applied for SOI for roof of the south, roof of the west school, okay, and 2 new buildings for the center, that's the center school was submitted earlier, and now this one. So going 4 for 4 would be a great average, so let's hope.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Beverly.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kerbal. Based on how the MSBA has operated in the past, we would find out sometime around November where things stand. So we'll see how that unfolds. But thank you for that update. All right. Thank you for a very good meeting, and we'll be on for next meeting, May 19th, 2020 at 3 p.m. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you.